I miss not having special music because that's usually when I prepare the sermon. So, give me a minute here. All of us know the power of water. It has healing and destructive qualities. Our bodies are 60% water. It is an important factor in our longevity, following heredity and attitude. It is the third most important factor, even more important than diet and exercise. So stay hydrated. Water was there if we were baptized. Maybe you were too young, or it was forgettable, or you haven't gotten around to it yet, but many of us have pretty vivid memories about our baptism. Sometimes there's been unusual stories. I was at a church in Missouri. We had a new custodian who was Roman Catholic, and this baptism business by immersion was rather different for him, and he prepared the baptistry, and I arrived at church the morning of the baptisms, and the baptistry was about 120 degrees. It was hot enough to scald chickens. And, that could be fixed by draining some of the water and adding others, but one year when I was at Broadmoor, it was a rather cold Easter, and the automatic heater had failed to function, and we had a couple of boys being baptized, and we warned them that the water was cold and whether or not maybe they wanted to consider putting this off, and they said, "Oh no, we'll go through with it." But when the first boy stepped in the water, there was an expletive that came out. That's okay, because we washed all that away. My favorite baptism story was recounted by Bill Boswell, who was a Reeser minister years ago. And he was in Texas with his father, who was a minister, and he was a boy, and they were a country church. And they had a big revival, and they had lots of people that made confession of faith, and they were having baptisms. And the church had a kind of a common thing in those days. In the chancel, which was probably larger than this one, there was a place in the floor that could be opened up, and there was a tank there, and they would fill the tank for baptisms. And then they didn't have like dressing rooms, so they hung wires over the chancel, and they hung up sheets, and so they had different little compartments in the front of the church so that people could get dressed and all. So the baptisms had concluded, and there was quite a few, and people were quite excited, and the music director came out to lead a hymn that would unite the congregation, and it was quite a lively hymn. The music director began, to gesture quite wildly, and got more concerned about directing the music than where he was standing, and he kind of backed into that hole, and as he was trying to recover his balance, waving his arm wildly, he managed to grab some of those sheets, and everything fell down. And some of the folks that were in various stages of dress were quite disappointed to see that their little room was no longer existing. Scripture has many baptismal stories, and today I want to talk about a type of baptism. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory. And the man, although a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. And the young girl said to her mistress, If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." And Naaman went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." The king felt trouble, of course. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a message to him, saying, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in a rage. But his servants approached him and said, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you have not done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored, like the flesh of a boy, and he was clean. It's a little short, dramatic story I've always enjoyed. It kind of puts the powerful and haughty in their place, and it has a happy ending. This story is unique to the Bible, but not just to our Hebrew section. Jesus in Luke 4 says, "There were many lepers in Israel at the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed except Naaman the Syrian." So it is a story that had some staying power. So we know that Naaman was a decorated general, and he was a man obviously of wealth and power and influence. And he has the ear of a king and respect of the soldiers. And I'm sure he was used to getting his own way. And then he has this horrible disease, leprosy. And not only is it painful and debilitating, it is socially isolating. People don't want to get it, so they stay away from it. Now, he tries, I'm sure, many of the current cures of his time of leprosy, and nothing is working. And he's feeling desperate. So much so that he is willing to rely on the advice of this slave girl, a Jew. And then he goes to all this trouble and takes all this wealth with him. And he goes to the door of the prophet, and the prophet doesn't even come out to greet him. He just sends out a messenger and tells him to go wash in the muddy Jordan River. You can imagine that he might have been a little bit indignant. He was ready to abandon hope and return home in a huff, loathing the prophet, cursing his leprosy, and nursing a bruised ego. I'm sure that some of you have at least heard stories about being treated as a non-entity by a healthcare provider. You wanted to see somebody in charge, but a staffer was sent. Or you had a strange prescription. Or something real simple like cut back on your eating and exercise 15 minutes a day. I had a good friend that was a young family doctor at one time, and he said, 90% of the things that people come to me for are going to resolve themselves in a little bit of time. And he did not like to write too many prescriptions. And in this small community where he practiced, he received quite a bit of criticism because people wanted to get a prescription when they went to the doctor. They did not want to be told, well, if you just wait a little bit, you're going to get over this anyway. Our health is precious, and sometimes people are willing to do the ridiculous and the bizarre, the unproven, to try to get better health. And sometimes people will be involved in phony treatments, and they become victims not just of the illness, but of the treatment too. The story about Naaman kind of highlights some unnamed servants. They ask him, if you were asked to do something hard, wouldn't you have done it? Why don't you do something that's easy? Simply wash and be clean. Well, that's a pretty insightful question. The servants kind of understood their master. He would have been willing to do something hard. I'm sure he was a person whose fortitude and courage and skill and intelligence had, enabled him to be successful. I don't know if people still use Listerine mouthwash, but the whole concept of Listerine mouthwash is it was not tasting very good. They used to say in a commercial, it tastes bad to be good. That, if something tasted bad, then it must be powerful and a good thing for you. And the servant said, why not do the easier thing? Because the easier thing is, well, easier. Sometimes, I think in our Christian life, we don't really want to do the easy thing. Because the easy thing doesn't feel easy at all. Sometimes it feels, well, impossible. The easy thing offends our sensibilities. It disarms us. It challenges us. It leaves us feeling silly or unsophisticated and vulnerable. After all, we believe in God. We would like miracles that dazzle, divine encounters that make us look good. We don't want to have to sweat and struggle and show off. We just want to venerate the things that look holy. This story from 2 Kings is an interesting story that it reminds us that sometimes the simple things are just fine. Sometimes a simple thing can usher in God's healing presence. Sometimes God does work through what is easy. So Naaman takes off his armor and embarrasses himself in front of his servants and steps into the muddy water and gets down in it all the way. Okay, wash yourself. And then wash again. And then again. And again and again. Until your need to earn or buy or impress or demand is all washed away. Choose the easy thing. I was reading about Jesus commissioning 70 to go out and spread the message of good news. And he gives them a simple message. And don't take a lot of stuff with you. And just speak peace when you enter a house and stay there. And invest in one home and one family. And don't linger in hopeless places. And don't get cocky. And remember, the kingdom has come near to you. He gave them a hard task because it was so easy. It's kind of countercultural and intuitive. It makes us worry and suspicious. He gave them the task to live simply and vulnerably, to rely on the grace and hospitality of others, to go deep with people, to live as guests, sharing that faith with others, to speak peace first and last, let go in love, believe in the abundance of nearness of God's economy. And after a while, the disciples returned to Jesus, and they were filled with joy, and they described all the wonders that had happened. And Jesus said, I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning. The world changed. I wonder sometimes we complicate the Christian life. I mean, what does God want me to do? What is God's will? How shall I hear God's voice and determine God's plan? Are the answers really that hard? Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly. Pray. Listen. Love. Break the bread. Drink the wine. Bear the burden. Share the peace. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. Get off your high horse and get in the water. Sit down at the dinner table and speak peace to those who are feeding you. At some point, most of us were baptized in water. There may have been a little, there may have been a lot. But no matter how we were baptized, there are repercussions for the rest of our lives. For we are marked as Christ's own forever, and nothing can change that basic identity. There's a little story that Jesus stands before the Father God, and behind Jesus are a multitude of people who have chosen to follow him. And Jesus says, they followed me home. Can I keep them?